Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. We have over 180 participants sign up from all over the world, Belgium to Canada, Rwanda to the United Kingdom, and South Africa to Sierra Leone. Thank you ever so much for joining us. It's a great honor and a privilege to moderate this session. And my name is Abdishakur Tara. I'm a senior lecturer on research and education at Nottingham Institute of Education at Nottingham Trent University. And today, this webinar is actually part of the Effective School Leadership Matter webinar series, which has started on the 15th of February. And it's really jointly delivered by Africa Center for School Leadership, which is a flagship initiative by VVOB Rwanda, together with other partners, including Association for Development of Education in Africa, UNESCO ICPA, International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa, IEPA, Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, Nottingham Institute of Education at Nottingham Trent University, and College of Education and Behavioral Science at Sababa University in Ethiopia. So as usual, before I start this exciting session on removing gender barriers in school leadership, sharing best practice on the African continent, I would like to share a couple of housekeeping rules. This will include the webinar will be recorded and made available later on Africa Center for School Leadership website. So if you do not want to give a consent, please do let us know. The slides and any additional materials shared by the keynote speaker will be made available on the ACSL website. And any technical issues you experience, please do let us know as well. In order to ensure delivery smooth of the webinar, we have the following ground rules as well. Please keep your microphones muted during the keynote speech to avoid any background noise. We encourage you to ask as many questions as you can, but make sure you share those questions within the chat function, and we will make sure that presented during the question and answer session. As mentioned, the session is being recorded, and please do let us know as soon as you can if you provide any consent. The program, as you can see on the screen, is very straightforward. We have a keynote speaker, Professor Josephine Ahikiri, board member of FAO, and schoolwoman, gender and studies professor at Makerere University. We will have question and answer session after the keynote speech, and then we'll have reflection led by Dr. Grace Moawura at Africa Center for School Leadership Gender Consultant. Then we will be making an announcement of the next webinar and the date. So let's get started. We know the reason why we're here. Africa is a continent where gender disparities have an actual impact on gender equity, societal development, and educational achievement. And that's why women are underrepresented in school leadership. I don't want to get much into details, but I just want to highlight the research clearly indicates that school leaders who are women create better teaching and learning environment and drive better outcome for students. So more will be shared by Professor Akiri, and she will be enlightening us what these barriers are and how they can be removed. So who is Professor Josephine Akiri? Professor Akiri is a professor of gender studies in the School of Women and Gender Studies and currently she's the principal of College of Humanities and Social Science at Makerere University. She's also an honorary professor at Sussex University. It's also important to highlight her involvement currently as board member of the Forum for Africa Women and Educationalists, which underscores her commitment to promoting girls' education and women's leadership in Africa. Her scholarly activities has also been well recognized. Current research network include Countering the Backlash, Reclaiming Gender Justice, and Institute of Development Studies at Sussex University. And also she's member of Justice and Security at London School of Economics. Professor Harry has recent publication include Gender Poverty and Social Transformation, which is reflection on fractures and continuities in contemporary Uganda. So please do join me to welcome Professor Hekiri to deliver her keynote speech. Professor, over to you, the virtual microphone.
Thank you very much, moderator, for that kind introduction. As you have rightly said, I'm going to talk about the idea about removing gender barriers in school leadership, sharing best practices on the continent. And here I'm standing on the platform of FAWE, the Forum for African Women Educationalists, which has for the last 30 years been involved in this very question of girls' education, the school environment, and policies around education and equity. So as a member of FAWE and as a board member, I'm very pleased and honored to be part of this, for FAWE to be part of this great conversation. And it is with great enthusiasm that I'm here to discuss this topic that really lies at the heart of what FAWE stands for in terms of building teacher capacities to foster gender equality and inclusion in schools. Indeed, this very theme of removing gender barriers is what FAWE has been involved in and is in line with FAWE's interventions towards providing opportunities for young African women to thrive in education and in their lives generally. So as FAWE, I've been participating at country level, but also at board level as a board member. And for us, this conversation of school leadership and why it matters that it's balanced is at the heart of what FAWE is looking at in terms of contributing to equitable education systems. And so for us today, FAWE is going to share some of the innovations around these questions for the last 30 years, the 3 decades that FAWE has been in existence. What is it that has worked? What is it that needs to be scaled up? And the fact that this is a very multifaceted issue, the gender inequality, the barriers, and therefore it also equally requires multifaceted approaches as well as holistic approaches. So ladies and gentlemen, for us, it's very clear that education is not just a pathway to individual attainment or accomplishment, but that is a cornerstone for societal progress and transformation. So for millions of girls, it's very important that we have these conversations. So FAWE, in brief, is a Pan-African member-based NGO, non-governmental organization, operating in 33 countries across the African continent, and it operates through national chapters. So each of the countries that participate is constituted as a chapter that contributes to the broader goal of FAWE. And the vision is simply a future where every girl and woman in Africa is able to access quality education while transiting from one level to the other. The core mandate of FAWE is around gender equity and equality in education, so education generally for women and girls. And we've had 30 years of advocating for access, retention, and transition of girls in schools. And the strategic direction as of now for FAWE is to consolidate its stature as a one-stop center for data and evidence on women and girls on the African continent. The FAWE has conducted research, it has done policy advocacy, it has had interventions around increasing access through scholarships, through working with communities, and all this is evidence that will take this question to the next level. Of course, we are standing on the shoulders of visionary women that way back in 1992 thought of establishing this forum. So FAO was founded by 5 visionary African women ministers of education who recognized the urgent need to address gender disparities in the schooling system. And their vision was simple, that to ensure all African girls that they have access to quality education in a supportive and equitable environment. And so the fact that it's not just access in terms of numbers, but that there's the quality of education, the quality of participation, as well as the outcome, as the outcome of that in terms of the education output and outcomes that come out in terms of how the women participate in the education system. Of course, we are also standing on a policy framework globally and continentally, as well as the national frameworks. First of all, the Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 4 on quality education and Goal 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment. We also have the aspirations of the agenda, the AU Agenda 2063, which is around well-educated citizens and skills revolution underpinned by science, technology, and innovations. We also are standing on the continental education strategy, which is around response to education crisis, seeking to transform Africa's education systems, and has tools on inclusion, integration, equity, as well as on teacher development, where it is recognized that quality education is critical for development of any country. And the idea is that at least children above, by the age of 15, should actually all be achieving a minimum proficiency in reading and so on. So why are we talking about disparities in school leadership? And as the moderator rightly put it, why does it matter that we talk about female representation in school leadership? One of the things that normally we ignore is that actually a gender-balanced environment is a good in itself. Not that female teachers are angels or something like that, but that a balanced environment, a balanced society, a balanced schooling system already is a good in itself. And Sub-Saharan Africa, the recent research shows that female teachers remain underrepresented, especially in rural areas, in upper levels, let's say upper primary. If you start from early childhood, you see female teachers, then they start dwindling by primary 3, they dwindle further by primary 4 and 5, and you find that actually in primary 7, for those who have primary 7 as one of the critical levels at the lower level, you find that you have male teachers. And then also in secondary schooling, and also in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then that also means that the pool from which school leadership is actually scooped becomes narrow. So as women, female teachers narrow in those levels, the pool for them to actually be part of the school leadership also narrows. And the teaching then and learning contexts actually matter in promoting gender equality. It's not necessarily so that it's only female teachers that promote gender equality, but that actually, if you have a balanced school environment, then it's also probable that you will be able to promote gender equality, of course, with additional interventions such as motivation, sensitization and conscientization, motivating students and so on. And so in a way then also quality teachers are needed to challenge gender stereotypes. They need to challenge the discriminatory norms that are carried over from the family into in the community to the school environment. And also the fact that there is that challenge of rural versus urban, education in emergencies, and there is poor remuneration of teachers in rural schools. And these disparities are in about 4 areas. One of the critical disparity, of course, stems from cultural stereotypes and biases. And when we talk about cultural stereotypes, some people think that we are actually saying cultural stereotypes are equal to African and therefore bad. But actually what we are saying is that what we have is a totality of the colonial modernity that removed some of the practices, positive practices. For example, the whole philosophy of Ubuntu, of respect, and respect for each other, for women and men, and put in instead a hierarchy system that demeans women as sex objects and so on. So when African culture, but we are actually saying the current culture that we have that is a totality of our history, and that it dictates leadership roles as if they are supposed to be masculine, thereby promoting more men and limiting opportunities for women. There's also the fact that there's lack of or limited professional development. Women often face hurdles in accessing quality education and professional training. In a sense, that which also is a material, a raw material for leadership roles in the education system. You find that in some cases, even if women have that opportunity, the way in which the opportunities are presented and so on, women may even play themselves out because they lack those raw materials that you aggregate as you go along in terms of continuous professional development. Then also the work-life balance challenges, the dual burden of professional and then domestic. In a sense, you find that once a female either graduates, attains a certain education level, the next question that the parents, the friends, the relatives are asking is where, what? And all those about marriage and the fact that the biological clock is ticking, the anxieties around fitting in society. So in a way, all those actually discourage women from pursuing leadership. If you don't pursue leadership at your early career, it's very possible that you will remain on lower levels as you grow because, as I've said earlier, you have not had the opportunity to create those raw materials. So in a sense, what we are talking about is that the dual burden for women, which does not present itself in the same way as for men. For instance, when a man becomes a father, it does not contradict his professional development. You can father as many children as you want, and you still freely pursue your professional goals. Once a woman becomes a mother, a wife, they begin to compete with the professional development, which means that there is actually a need to address, one, the fact that there shouldn't be a contradiction between being a mother and being a leader, being a head teacher, being a principal, and so on. If society is able to reduce or redistribute care work. So there is a political issue there. It's not the burden that women have to individually balance, because there we are seeking just to create superhuman being. There are 12 hours, there are 24 hours, you cannot extend, which means that there is a need for society to rearrange what is being done and what is achieved at the domestic as well as the professional level. And then also the institutional discrimination in terms of policies and practices within educational institutions, sometimes and oftentimes favor men. Some of them are intentional, some of them are inadvertent, but in totality, they actually favor men, male dominance, and they perpetuate gender imbalances across the board. So what has been the experience of FAWE? One of the focus for FAWE and what we pick as some of the best practices that can cumulatively increase our take on barriers, on gender barriers. One of them is around clear policies and accountability mechanisms. FAWE works with governments and educational institutions to enact and enforce policies. And we've been at that forefront across the continent, collaborating with governments. You've seen that actually, first of all, the genesis was women ministers of education that had that vision. And FAWE is very proudly not and or to say one of the notable successes that in the development of the gender equality strategic for continental education strategy. That is something that we proudly associate with. It calls for investment in equal education. And FAWE spearheaded this through numerous advisory platforms. And this is something that can spur a lot of growth and a lot of development in terms of how we consistently and intentionally deal with gender inequality in the schooling system. As we note, definitely, this is something that is ingrained in our, historical kind of development, and we need also to have a kind of historical approach to say, how do we actually cumulatively deal with these issues? The other experience is about FAWE's model on gender responsive pedagogy, which focuses on training teachers to adopt gender responsive, curriculum development, curriculum, in the teaching, the materials, the delivery, the engagement of learners, and ensuring that girls receive the quality that they deserve. And this gender responsive pedagogical model does not just focus on the teaching as a one-way kind of traffic, but that it empowers, or it seeks to empower teachers to become advocates of gender equality within their schools and their communities. So a teacher at once becomes that actor who is supposed to spur the change in stereotypes and so on. And at the same time, that teacher also progresses and becomes a leader within the system. The other aspect is about continuous professional development opportunities for women. As I have mentioned, sometimes women lose out maybe about 10 years of their professional development when they have to do the other societal role of actually giving birth to the next generation. So it is not a loss, but if it's recognized and validated, then women can also be given some of the mentorships and support networks to actually begin to surmount the lost time and surmount the stereotypes that work against them. And there's also promotion of work-life balance, especially what has been known as 3 Rs. Respect or recognize care work as important, but also look to reducing it in terms of interventions around energy and so on, and also look to redistributing care work Some of the research that has been done across the continent and by some of the schools like the School of Women and Gender Studies have established that actually participation in care work is good for everybody. That emotional engagement is good for everybody, including men. They find that at some point they become isolated and lose out because they've just been involved in instrumental roles, pay school fees, pay this, pay that. Some of them don't pay anything, and so they become isolated. And redistribution is one of the ways in which has been seen to actually promote that balance, even for men. And also challenging stereotypes, of course, as we have mentioned. So FAWE has developed through some cone-shaped process, starting, for example, with scholarships for girls who are needy, giving them access, starting with secondary, flowing into university, higher education. But as Howard did that, it saw that actually it needed a more holistic kind of approach. And so one of those recommendations is that the holistic approaches, you tackle the issue of access, you tackle the quality of participation, you tackle quality of outcome, you tackle leadership, you tackle the fact that people have to be continuously engaged, they have to be continuously engaged in professionally developing themselves. And so it has shown that it yields sustainable results, and it sort of creates that world of the possible, because you're building one success onto the other and learning from experience. Also, that the issue of school-related gender-based violence is a big one. It discourages learners, it distorts the learning environment. Even teachers are harassed. So addressing and responding to violence in the school system is a very important intervention that needs to happen, and needs to happen in a very holistic manner. If somebody they should not just be transferred, but they should be able to have accountability mechanisms that make them accountable, so to say. And that there must be that continuous professional development and support for female teachers. And even when they've assumed leadership, let them not be isolated. Let there be support that helps them to actually have that transformational effect on the learning environment. There is also need to promote intentionally, but also in a very serious manner, promote STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Not just the physical aspects of laboratories, but also the manner in which it is delivered, and also the fact that there's that rural urban divide. And in a sense, STEM and female teachers is also something that needs to be brought together. The other is also about gender responsive school leadership. in a sense that once you have the responsiveness, you're able to transform the entire education systems. The local context matters, and Hawe, as a mode of work, has, deeply, entrenched within the local context. Programs are designed to reflect the unique cultural, economic, and social realities of each community in as far as possible, not going into cultural relativism, where then you say, in this culture, we shall do this or this, but ensuring that the interventions are effective and are resonating with the local aspirations and the communities that they aim to serve. In other words, there's that participatory approach that really needs to happen. And the CESA, the Continental Education Strategy, is holistic and should be a reference point in terms of looking at issues of school leadership. I would like to finally say that as we reflect on Hawe's journey, let us be inspired by the resilience and potential of the girls that we serve. And I think the moderator also mentioned that in many cases, school leadership, female leadership, makes a difference because it brings some of the required qualities that need to happen in terms of addressing the needs of both girls and boys. On the continent now, there is something that is arising, the cry about the boy child, and the fact that, when, for example, there are examinations and girls outnumber boys, there is an outcry that, the boy child has been left behind. One of the issues is that actually that outcry could be part of backlash because in any countings that happen, females outnumber males. Even in country censuses and so on, there are very few countries where men outnumber women, which means that naturally, if it was a natural process, women, the females, should be either 50-50 or slightly more. And the concern about the boy child should not be seen to displace the concern about the barriers that are in our society, but rather we should work to remove barriers for both males and females. So we need to commit to the cause of gender equality in education, recognizing the future of Africa depends on girls and boys, and that together we can create a world where every African girl, where every African boy has the opportunity to learn, to grow, and lead. And together we can empower the next generation of women leaders who will drive Africa's development and transformation. I'd like to stop here. Thank you for this opportunity that has been given to FAWE to spotlight the best practices of addressing gender barriers in the school leadership. Asanteni sana.
Karibu sana. Thank you very much, Professor Akiri. What an enlightening in terms of the issue that you highlighted, and also the purpose of this this webinar. I totally agree, and I really concur to a number of key points you highlighted, including the cultural barrier, and also the societal belief, which sometimes unnecessarily prevent girls and women to progress and play a crucial role in our education and schooling system. I thoroughly enjoyed your, and I'm sure other participants did similar. And I just want to really also highlight those who might not be aware. There is an extensive study carried out by Natalie Gilbert, which I will post the link of that research soon. And I think you made really quite very strong points. And one of the things that actually struck me particularly is that absence of lack of support at the school level. It's really important that having kind of stage career support or through mentorship available to girls and women, particularly teachers who, and sometimes really quite interesting to see. I've been to Ethiopia, Somalia, and other countries, and sometimes quite significantly, what I've seen is female teachers really quite well performing, very well engaging in class, kind of quality of instruction they provide, and at the same time, lack of presence them in the school leadership team within the schools. So it's really quite very important to highlight some of these challenges. There are a number of questions, Professor, been highlighted here, and I think one of the key highlighted question is a colleague from Global School Leader, Sanya Sagar, who addressed the question of, I'm wondering what kind of support network or mentorship programs have shown promising to your experience. I know you have generally talked about lack of support available, but I think it would be really great if you could answer this question. What kind of skills should they be focusing on, and particularly the mentorship and support that could be available to them at school level? Professor.
There are very many modes of always on empowering the female teachers, first of all, in terms of self realization and the realization of the environment that they are operating in, understanding the societal environment and so on, and then also enjoining them to understand, for example, the policies, the education policies. How do you become a head teacher? You don't just, even if people like you can't just pop up and become a head teacher. There has to be a kind of what I called raw materials. How do you amass those raw materials in terms of the experience, in terms of the activities that you've participated in? So that awareness creation amongst the female teachers is very important. And also enabling them to be part of networks, not just individual actors. In many cases, because of time poverty, women tend to be lone actors, lone hunters. They lack those networks because they are trying to juggle around. But within that juggling, how do you become part of a network? Teachers associations, other networks, other non-government organizations, for example, women rights organizations, because through that, there's a way in which you build your capacity, you build your competencies, and you also build your appreciation of the environment you're working in and how you can progress in leadership roles. So that's briefly what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. I would like to bring Dr. Christian Sood, an experienced school leader within this institute, to also provide any kind of response in relation to school-based mentorship for female school leaders or female teachers. or female inspiring head teachers. Christian.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Sood. Forgive me, I cannot open the video for whatever reason, but I think what Professor says is absolutely correct. And just to build on that, I would add just 2 or 3 key points, perhaps for development for future leaders, aspiring leaders. I would suggest, first of all, that what we need to do is to reimagine the future of leadership. What does leadership mean? Under what context? If we talk about leadership for learning, then we need to be pedagogical experts in the classroom, as Adish says. I think to see developing leaders, I think we need to have 3 key issues, 3 key ingredients in place. I would suggest that the political voice has to be developed so that when they are chairing, when they're members of their committees, when they're chairing governors and so on, you need to have that political voice and be politically savvy to address some of the recurring issues, which may be very stereotypical. I would suggest something to do with assertive training for future leaders to be amongst boys and girls, starting in this primary, secondary school sector, perhaps. And then finally, and I think just building on what Josephine was saying, is to continue to develop the emotional intelligence of colleagues so that you are role models for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. I would like also to call Demosa Degafa from University of Addis Ababa, who's also noted in the chat box. You want to share a couple of things. Demosa?
Hello, thank you, everyone.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah, so sorry I arrived a little bit late, and I'm new to this session as well. I have asked the moderator to say a few things about my institution, my department, and my university, where we have department in charge of training future leaders of education sector. So if I begin with my university, Addis Ababa University is in fact the oldest and the largest university in the country. Like it has been established some 77 years back. Today, it has more than close to 50,000 students, both in the undergraduate, master's, and the PhD programs, where my department is located. My department is one of the departments in the College of Education, known by the name Department of Educational Planning and Management. We have been working on training school leaders all the way from primary school to university level. Currently, we run a number of graduate programs, including our PhD in Educational Policy and Leadership, whereby we have helping other universities in the country as a source of faculty teaching in different parts of the country. So currently, Addis Ababa University is undergoing a reform whereby we are moving from entirely state-owned university to somehow semi-autonomous university, whereby we are looking for partners like we have here to conduct joint research on school leadership that looks into policies in different countries and the practices. And also we are looking for a potential partner for like offering short-term training for practicing school leaders, whereby gender and disability is in focus. So thank you, Prof, for giving me this valuable time. So this is what I have shortly to you and your colleagues here. Thank you.
Abdish, you're on mute.
Sorry, apologies for that. The moderator is muted.
Okay.
Right, thank you. I just want to really highlight a question around the key challenges. And it's really good to bring also one of the key gender consultants within ACSL, Dr. Grace Mawara, around what are the key challenges so far and how the best way to actually minimize or remove that barrier. Grace.
Thanks, Professor Tara. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you very much for that question. I think Professor Hikire highlighted some of these challenges, articulated them in her presentation, and I could go through some of them. Particularly those that at the micro level that relate with the women, the cultural aspects that she talked about, but then also there's what is at the institutional level, at the school level, for example, the perceptions that existing school leaders may have or school inspectors may have about women in school leadership. And then moving a higher level from that is also what we have at the macro level, whereby the policies that we have in place also may inhibit the accession and retention of women in school leadership, or even the lack of those policies. We have seen in some instances we do not have policies that empower women to do that. We could go into details of that, but let me know if this is the time for me to come on board to offer some reflections overall on the presentation of Professor Fick.
No,
Yeah.
that's why we'll come to that. There is another question from Kenya.
Okay.
There is a question, yeah. So there is a question from Kenya, Fiona. She's a teacher from Kenya at the moment, and she's asking Professor Josephine a question in relation to what type of support available or whether FAO offer a mentorship or training programs for teachers in Kenya. If yes, what are the requirements? Professor Josephine.
Actually, the FAO Secretariat is in Nairobi, and they have programs that are on their website, which indicate which kinds of programs are running and so on. So what I would say at the moment, of course, as a board member, I wouldn't know the actuals in terms of what is happening in Kenya or other countries like Uganda, Zambia, Malawi, and so on. But all the programs are on their website, and you can also reach out to the FAO Secretariat, which is located in Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Professor. As we promised from last webinar, that this is going to be very interactive. I would like to bring Lucy Wakiaga, who actually present a very good comment. Lucy, are you there? Can you join us?
I am here, Dishakur.
Please share your comments with the audience.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much, and thanks to Prof for her insightful sharings. My comment was just in relation to also looking at, well, you know, when we talk about these gender issues, we sometimes focus more on the outside, but I also just wanted to add to the conversation in terms of even thinking about the woman as the individual, and what agency does she have? What is her level of agency in terms of her voice, and how can that be cultivated? And of course, it begins from the younger years, but then also in the school environment, when when there's the cultivation of those leadership capacities in the women, or providing those opportunities, just to provide an enabling environment for that. I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday, and we were even looking at this practice, whether it is by omission or commission, whereby you tend to find the principal is male, the deputy principal is female. And that tends to be the practice. But why is that? Why don't you have the female as the principal and then the male as the deputy? So you see these kinds of practices, and I think Prof has alluded to that. Dr. Mwaura also has alluded to that in terms of the institutional structure. How is it structured? And you see, these are the things that our learners see. And so when they're even pursuing leadership, that is what is in their heads because of the things that they continue to see in the environment. And so you have a lot of female teachers, but then when it comes to leadership positions, they always are at the lower rung of the leadership structure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Can I ask you, Lucy, where are you from?
I am from Kenya, and I work at the African Population and Health Research Center. I'm an educator. I've been in education 99% of my career.
Excellent.
And I'm still working in education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. So just a quick question, Josephine, although I'm the moderator, but I think I have the privilege also and the right to ask you a question. In terms of the policy level, where do you think policy at the national level fits in this whole idea of removing barrier of women in terms of school leadership?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, the national context really matters, and the education ministries have specific policies in terms of how one progresses from one level to another. Some of those look like they are based on merit. But within that merit, there are some hidden subtexts about how one achieves one level to another, meaning that critical gender angle to the policies, and also, if possible, a way of implementing affirmative action. Many of the country through all the sectors and all the levels, it would mean that also in the education leadership trajectory, there would be that intentional focus on how to get balanced school leadership. So one is to look at the policies, but also possibility of affirmative action in terms of headship of schools, inspectors of schools, even these other levels, such that, as the previous speaker said, you don't just have the deputyship syndrome that she has talked about, because deputyship also is a replay of gender hierarchy, actually. I would like to stop there.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. There is a couple of comments actually made, and it's great to hear that it's been mentioned Paulo Ferreira's critical pedagogy, which is something I keep teaching here at the Nottingham Trent University. it is really important to say the comment, to share the comment. It says, following Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy, a perfect approach to identify social, cultural, institutional, and gender micro biases in society. The schools of the 21st century are encouraged to empower students to become aware of the biases and be given the voice to ask the relevant question to address the micro and the macro. So I'm going to bring the person, actually. This is really quite very important. Samson Yegbele, if you want to put yourself and unmute and please share your thoughts on this. Samson? Samson, you can present your comments and yes.
All right, thank you very much for. I am Samson from Ghana. I am a College of Education teacher, a teacher trainer. I train female teachers in our College of Education, St. Teresa's College of Education, Hohwe. I have become a font to Freire's critical pedagogy, looking at our experiences in the classroom and in the society, where injustices are usually and daily perpetrated against students, female children, and the vulnerable in the society. Especially once the teacher sees himself as a person in power, this results in the teacher-centered classrooms where learners are only given information to receive, process, and replay for examination and others. And this is making us not totally educated, attending schools for schooling's sake, but we are not learning. So I describe it, school for all, but not learning for all. But when you follow the critical pedagogy critically, you would observe that if you follow it, like following the discussions on the webinar today, this is a process that if we enforce it in the near future, the society will become a place of peace, a place of joy, where everybody gets developed, and we shall all enjoy Mother Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another important question from someone from Somalia. Professor Josephine, the person is asking whether there is any interest reaching out to educators in Somalia. That means whether there is any activity FAO is organizing in Somalia.
I'll take that question back to the Secretariat in Nairobi, and I'll have the answer because as a board member, you're not on ground. You just come to look at things at a strategic level. But I'm going to take that question, and I will, provide feedback on Somaliland.
That's fine. There was another question earlier also in relation to the slides, and I think I just want to mention that the slides will be available on the ACSL website. So there was a question earlier. Professor, just one of the things I do remember in terms of building the capacity of individuals is having access to a mentorship. This has been also mentioned quite a lot in recently. Do you agree that having a female mentorship, does it really gender matter who will be the mentor, whether female or male? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that question later, but I just want to get your thoughts on that. You're muted, Professor.
This question has very many answers. It is not yes and no, but I'm going to first say yes.
Okay.
Because it does matter, because the female must learn from the whole question of it is possible. because sometimes male mentors are mentoring women to be sociological males. Like you're measuring a woman on masculine standards. So a leader must be this, must be that. But actually, what you're trying to do is to create a possible or the world of the possible. And I know that some males can actually mentor women, but in principle, females should be able to mentor fellow females so that they create that world of the possible. But it doesn't remove the fact that males can actually mentor females.
Thank you so much. As we are really looking at the best practice and whether it's a global context or the African continent context, and one of the things I know, the role of the head teachers or the role of school leaders actually do universally similar. But I just want to bring Professor Phil Wood, who just to share about the context of supporting and inspiring school leaders at the school level. Professor Phil Wood.
You see me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, supporting aspiring leaders at school level, I think, is. I mean, my research very much focuses on organisation as well as leadership, and I think to really think about how we aid people to become better leaders, how we aid people to develop as leaders, means that we really need to understand how they fit within our organizations and how those organizational networks operate. I think certainly my own experience in the UK, it's very easy for schools to become very hierarchical, and for new leaders really just to learn almost by mimicking those who are already doing senior roles, rather than really helping people to understand the complexity of what it is they're coming into, rather than helping them really understand the various aspects of the job, because leadership is difficult. Leadership is very difficult in any organization. And therefore, I think we need a much more holistic view of what leadership is, and a much more holistic view of how we help people begin to gain the experience and the understanding of the various aspects of the role.
Thank you, Professor Wood, for your input. A couple of comments made by one of the participants, Patrick from Kampala. And my take on this is what he said. My take on this is that opportunities for women to grow professionally are available. I think it's very interesting to hear from Patrick. So Patrick, if you unmute yourself, and please do share what you said on the chat box. Patrick. Patrick Osiko, are you there?
Oh, yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Good evening, good morning. I'm Patrick in Kampala. I am a teacher. I started as a primary teacher, and I was under the leadership of a female head teacher for 12 years. And I had great mentorship under that leadership. At the moment, I do training for teachers and head teachers at higher level. But what I realize is that there are opportunities, especially in Uganda. There are opportunities for women to grow into leadership, especially in the education sector. However, the challenge is the mindset. And then what Professor Alia talked about, stereotype and the culture of that has really affected the women, whereby when one gets into the profession, they feel that they should remain at a certain level and it's only the men to grow to higher levels. So it is the issue of mindset, sensitization, telling women that to set their personal career goals and aim higher. That's what I have to say on this. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Patrick. That's really good to hear. So we come almost to the end of this interesting topic. I just want to thank Professor Josephine for her insightful input that she made earlier. Thank you ever so much, Professor. I would like now to call Dr. Grace Mawara, who is a gender consultant at VVOB Rwanda, and she would like just to give us some reflection, some sort of takeaways from the wonderful presentation that we had from Professor Josephine. Over to you, Grace.
Thank you very much, Professor Tara, and thank you so much as well, Professor Hikre, for the word of keynote speech. And also to everyone who has been contributing to this conversation this afternoon, because it's absolutely essential for us to think about gender equality and women empowerment when you're talking about quality education and school leadership. So I will use the next few minutes to just flag some of the highlights from what we have listened today, from the presentation of the keynote speaker, but also some insights that I have listened to from the question and answer session that we have just had. First is to thank Professor Hikre for the presentation. It was delivered very, very well, but also to appreciate and acknowledge the role of FAWE and also in their partnership with the African Center for School Leadership and the work they have been doing for 30 years in 33 countries, advocating for access, retention, and transition of girls in schools. Indeed, they are working at the pipeline where we're going to get women get into leadership roles in the school and in the education system, and that's a noble job that is already ongoing through FAWE and other partners. We also appreciate their contribution to, for example, gender responsive pedagogy, and I think she talked about that and how significant that is and how then that relates to school leadership. She went on to highlight where the inspiration for ensuring gender equality and also gender responsive school leadership comes from drawing from existing policies and strategies, the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 4 and SDG 5, but also Agenda 2063. And most importantly is the reality of what we are going through. And I think one of the contributors, one of the participants have highlighted that we are achieving schooling, but we're not achieving learning. We have enrollment, but perhaps don't even have enough girls. And there's the leaky pipeline where we drop off girls. So the fact that these challenges already exist in the school system, then addressing the issues of gender in school leadership is one way of addressing these challenges. Moving on to some of the barriers that Professor Hikre has highlighted and also have come up in the conversation following that. I think it was well articulated, this issue of cultural stereotypes and biases. And I like what Lucy Wakiaga, Dr. Wakiaga highlighted about the agency of the woman herself. Even before we go to the institution and to the whole system, it starts with how does a young girl grow up perceiving herself in society? Does she see herself as potentially becoming a leader? Do we offer opportunities for them to become leaders? And I think one of Professor Sood's comment was about offering these leadership responsibilities and roles in different settings, not just for female teachers or male teachers, but also for young learners right from their primary school age, secondary, moving on, offering them opportunities to appreciate that they can be in leadership roles so that even when they get to school leadership, they can comfortably take on those roles. But also they start working on their voice and on their agency from a very early stage. I think that was a very brilliant contribution to how to identify the challenge, the barriers that exist, to break the stereotypes that exist, and then move on to achieve excellence in that particular area. Professor Hikre also talked about the limited opportunities for professional development, which is essential for preparation of school leadership. And I would want to flag this because this is one of the main areas of focus for the Center for the African Center for School Leadership. The fact that in majority of the countries, there isn't a clear pathway for how one prepares to become a school leader may actually limit those who already do not have access to school leadership responsibilities. Institutional barriers we've already mentioned, policies or the lack of policies that will inhibit entry or even retention in school leadership, or rather in leadership in the other significant barrier that Professor Hikre highlighted and went on to elaborate significantly was this issue of work-life balance and how that challenges majority of the women, and especially not just in the African context, but around the world. Childcare takes up a huge responsibility, it takes a huge part of our day-to-day time. We all have 24 hours, but most of the women who have to take care of children and their family and also show up for work, show up for leadership roles, you are always torn between balancing these two. And I think this is usually a major contribution to maybe either saying no or not even considering going for leadership roles if they require more time commitment. How can we find a balance for domestic and professional responsibilities? How can we provide systems that actually allow women to participate effectively in leadership roles while also getting help? And I think Professor Hikre explained about the 3 R's and also talked about the redistribution of work. Moving on to some of the other points that she highlighted. Apologies, I think my video is shaking, but will get fixed soon. She offered a set of principles, I'd call them a set of principles, or some of the best practices that she was drawing from the work of Fawe about relating to how to promote gender inclusive school leadership. And I like where she started about with clear policies and accountability mechanisms, and that's at the very top level. We need to have policies guiding us, accountability mechanisms, standards for professional development, for example, set up. And then moving to the next level is then building the capacity, starting from the teacher training level. And most importantly, she has flagged the issue of gender responsive pedagogy. And being intentional about investing in continuous professional development and specifically supporting women to take on these opportunities when they are offered. The issue of mentorship, I do not want to emphasize that much further because we have extensively discussed it, but just to add up a point that was mentioned, and that relates to the question that Professor Tara asked about, would you recommend a male or a female mentor to a female leader? And agreeing with what everyone has said, I think there are two components of that. There's the aspect of mentorship, then the aspect of role modeling. So depending on what goal you have with the mentorship, it could be achieved with a male or a female mentor, but a role model potentially should be a female role model so that you can walk in her shoes. You can see, I think Professor Hikre used a very good term about creating the possible, and I think that's absolutely important. She went on to talk about the issue of redistribution of care work, so I won't come back to that. And then finally, challenging the gender stereotypes and investing more in STEM and having more girls move into the STEM space so that we actually can balance the numbers that we have and have a pool to draw from when we are talking about gender and school leadership. Finally, Professor Hikre did talk about some of the recommendations, again, drawing from her work with FAWE and the other institutions that she has been working with. She emphasized the aspect of training on gender-responsive pedagogy, but also gender-responsive leadership, because I think these go hand in hand and are one and the same, and absolutely important, and concur with her on that. Recruiting and increasing the number of female teachers so that you have a pool to draw on when you have the leadership roles to be taken on. And I think here I would want to emphasize that the context absolutely matters when you're thinking about increasing the number of female teachers, because we already know we have fewer female teachers in the rural areas than in the urban areas. So how do you go about ensuring that you're recruiting and retaining them in all areas, and what incentives are required to ensure that you achieve that? So context becomes very, very important. An important aspect, perhaps we haven't quite discussed it today, but it's very important. I know the organizations that really look at this more keenly is the aspect of school-related gender-based violence, because Professor Hikre did highlight that it's not just for the learners, but also it's for the teachers themselves, and how that also can affect how they get into leadership positions. How do we go about addressing that? So it's from training, moving on. And moving on to the last one before the parting shot, Professor Tara, is developing and implementing professional development programs for school leaders and supporting women specifically, and obviously the policy level actions that are required. In closing, I would say that what we have heard today is that the journey has already been started for gender equality and gender in school leadership. It's a rough one, but we have to keep walking on that path and listening to everyone in this room, in this space today. I think there is commitment from everyone, and we are all putting in making our small steps towards achieving that goal. So with that, thank you very much. And I hope I have highlighted all the key points that we had today, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you. And I really like the last statement where you said, the journey has started, but it's a very rough one. Excellent. Thank you. As we did last time, can I ask kindly if you just put a one word, all of the participants who are here, one word that actually tells us, that describes what have you actually learned today. Just one single word, please. We'll give you 30 seconds to write up in the chat box. Yeah? Just one word that describes how do you feel after this session. Empowered, enlightening, yes, there's something coming up. Excellent, thank you. Inspired or possible, yes, I agree with that. Encourage, hope, passionate, refreshing, mentored, insightful, interesting, empowered again, educated. Oh, go on and on. Excellent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It really matters quite a lot to us, particularly those who are here. Now, good news I have for the Somali colleagues who asked the question about whether FAO have any activities there. Yes, there is a representation FAO in a region called Garowe. So that's the good news that I want to share. If possible, can you all turn your camera on, please? As my colleague Etienne would like to take a screenshot. Thank you. So we can all be smiling. Give us a smile, and give a smile to our wonderful professor, Josephine. Oh, I can see. Wonderful. Absolutely. There are a couple of more to go. And then and we'll ask Etienne to take the opportunity to screenshot. 3,
Hello,
2.
Hello, doctor.
Yes.
I don't know the reason my camera is off.
But your name will appear. That's even much better. Thank you.
The host has
no worries. If your camera is not working, your wonderful name is on there. So we like to record that. Thank you. Can we all give us happy hands? Thank you. So Etienne, have you taken the screenshot? Yeah, excellent. Thank you ever so much. I would like now to ask Etienne to share the theme, the topic next one, which is, I think it's coming up now. It's a professionalization of school principals. professionalization of school leadership, the challenges and opportunities for the continent. Etienne, can you manage to share the screen or the banner? Or would that be enough? Right. So the next webinar, it's going to be July. We will confirm the date, but it will be professionalization of school leadership, which will be delivered by University of Addis Ababa College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. Unless you have any other points, or I would like to end the session, and I would particularly like to thank Professor Joseph Ahikeri for joining us, and also Grace, who actually make the roundup. Thank you so much. So the announcement is there: professionalization of school leadership in Africa. I hope you will join us. We will communicate with you when the date is fixed. And I would also like to thank the man I always admire behind all these things. I will call one by one, is Etienne, who's really great technical man who's behind all the wonderful in terms of communication. My other colleagues, Dr. Fai Hotze, we call it Fantastic Fay, and also our other colleagues who've been tremendously contributing to this, the working group from all of our different institutions. Thank you ever so much. And it's 1 minute past the time we fixed. Have a lovely afternoon, morning, evenings, and we'll hope to see you the next webinar, which will be in July. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.